Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
The American Revolution, 1775 to 1783, stands as one of the most transformative and tumultuous periods in history. While the conflict is often framed as a tale of colonial resistance against British tyranny, the reality is far more complex. Beyond the white-dominated narratives of founding fathers and patriotic fervor lies a deeper, lesser-known story of alliances and struggles, one that intertwines the fates of Black Loyalists and Native American nations. This untold dimension of the American Revolution reveals a mosaic of motivations, allegiances, and hopes, where the marginalized fought not just for survival, but for a vision of liberty that remained tantalizingly out of reach. The road to the revolution was paved with tensions over land, labor, and governance. Yet, for enslaved Africans and Native Americans, the stakes were far more existential. Black people in the American colonies, many of whom were enslaved, faced a brutal system of dehumanization and forced labor. Native nations, meanwhile, were struggling to retain their ancestral lands in the face of relentless colonial expansion. As the conflict between the British Crown and rebellious American colonists erupted into war, both groups found themselves at a crossroads. Would they side with the rebellious patriots who spoke of liberty but often upheld oppression, or would they find common cause with the British, who promised freedom and protection but had their own imperial interests? For Black Loyalists, the war presented a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness of bondage. The British, recognizing the strategic advantage of undermining the colonial economy and society, issued proclamations offering freedom to enslaved individuals who fled their patriot masters to fight for the crown. Lord Dunmore's proclamation of 1775 was among the first of such promises, declaring that any enslaved person who joined British forces would be granted their freedom. For thousands of enslaved Africans, this was not merely an opportunity to escape oppression, but a chance to take up arms in the fight for a cause they could call their own. They were not naive to the complexities of British intentions. Many understood that the Crown's motives were self-serving. Yet, the promise of freedom was too compelling to ignore. The story of Native alliances during the Revolution is equally intricate. For many indigenous nations, the war was not a distant struggle between European powers, but a direct threat to their sovereignty and survival. The burgeoning United States posed an existential danger, with its settlers hungry for land and expansion. The British, while no saints in the eyes of Native communities, were often seen as the lesser of two evils. Britain's long-standing alliances with Native nations, forged through trade and diplomacy, offered some measure of protection against encroaching colonists. For many Native leaders, siding with the Crown was a calculated decision, a choice to preserve their people and their lands in the face of an uncertain future. As the war unfolded, these alliances between Black Loyalists, Native nations, and the British Crown revealed the fluid and contested nature of loyalty and freedom. Black soldiers and laborers played critical roles in the British war effort, serving in units like the Ethiopian Regiment and the Black Pioneers. Their presence on the battlefield challenged the racial hierarchies of the time, even as they fought under commanders who often shared the same prejudices as their patriot adversaries. Despite these contradictions, Black Loyalists persevered, driven by the hope of a new life beyond the chains of slavery. Native nations, too, contributed to the British cause in profound ways. From the Iroquois Confederacy in the north to the Creek and Cherokee in the south, indigenous warriors and leaders provided critical support to British forces. Yet, these alliances were fraught with internal divisions and external pressures. The Iroquois Confederacy, for instance, split over the question of whether to support the British or remain neutral, with devastating consequences for its unity and strength. Meanwhile, Native nations that sided with the Patriots often found themselves isolated and betrayed as the tide of the war turned. The end of the Revolution in 1783 marked a bitter reckoning for Black Loyalists and Native allies. The Treaty of Paris, which formalized American independence, made scant provisions for those who had fought alongside the British. Black Loyalists who had fled their enslavers and served the Crown faced an uncertain future. While some were evacuated to Nova Scotia, the Caribbean, or Sierra Leone, many were re-enslaved or subjected to harsh conditions in their new homes. For Native nations, the treaty was an even greater betrayal. Britain's cession of vast territories to the United States ignored the sovereignty of indigenous peoples, leaving them vulnerable to the expansionist ambitions of the new republic. Yet, even in the face of these setbacks, the legacy of Black Loyalists and Native alliances endures. Their stories challenge the simplistic narratives of the American Revolution, revealing the complexities of loyalty, freedom, and resistance. For Black Loyalists, the war was not just a fight against the Patriots, but a broader struggle for dignity and self-determination. Their contributions laid the groundwork for future movements for Black liberation, from abolitionism to civil rights. For Native nations, the alliances of the Revolution underscore the resilience and adaptability of indigenous peoples in the face of relentless colonial aggression. Their struggles during the war presage the ongoing fight for sovereignty and justice that continues to this day. The American Revolution, then, was not a monolithic struggle, but a contested terrain where marginalized groups sought to carve out their own visions of freedom. Black Loyalists and Native allies remind us that the fight for liberty has always been a multifaceted and deeply human endeavor. Their stories compel us to look beyond the familiar heroes and battles, to reckon with the broader implications of a revolution that promised so much yet delivered so unevenly. By revisiting their experiences, we gain a fuller understanding of the complexities of the past and the enduring quest for justice in the present.